My new apartment has one rule: cover every mirror by midnight. I'm typing this on a library computer at 4 a.m. because I left my laptop an hour ago and have no plans on going back for it. If you're listening to this and looking for a cheap apartment in the Pacific Northwest, avoid the Greystone district at all costs. Don't sign the lease. Don't take the keys. And for the love of everything holy, if you see an addendum that reads Midnight Guest Protocol, get the hell out. I thought I was slick. I thought I was snagging the steal of a century, an $800 a month 2-bedroom loft. I didn't care that the property manager, a twitchy woman who I'll refer to as Mrs. G, refused to make eye contact when she thrust the pen at me, nor when she said the plumbing gargled at night. I signed my name, I took the keys, and then she handed me the welcome kit. It wasn't fruit. It was a toolbox containing 3 rolls of industrial gaffer tape, a pile of thick blackout curtains, and a single sheet of paper with bold, capitalized, bizarre instructions. The rules are non-negotiable, she warned me. Eviction is the least of your worries if you disobey them. I laughed in her face. I'm not laughing now. I'm a junior architect, which is a fancy way of saying I work insane hours for poverty wages. I needed to be within walking distance of the firm, and these lofts seemed perfect. The floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick, and industrial chic looked like the interior of a high-end design magazine. During the showing, all the windows were covered with the thickest drapes I'd ever seen, and even the bathroom mirror, a giant antique bolted to the wall, was shrouded in a black sheet. Mrs. G explained it away as the previous tenant being a light-sensitive hypochondriac. But when it came to signing the lease, she flipped to page 14. Clause 7, she whispered. The Midnight Guest Protocol. It read as follows. Tenant agrees that between 2:14 a.m. and 4:44 a.m., all reflective surfaces in the unit must be covered. This includes, but is not limited to, mirrors, windows, televisions, and unpolished metallic surfaces. Failure to comply shall be construed as an invitation. Management is not liable for any physical or psychological distress incurred due to an invitation. I asked her if this was a joke, if the building was haunted. Mrs. G did not laugh. She just tapped the paper with a chipped nail. This is a term of occupancy. The reduced rent accounts for the inconvenience. Do you want the apartment or not? I was broke and desperate. I signed the lease. I assume I'd play along with their stupid superstition for a few months, save some money, and get the hell out. I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in contract law and cheap rent. The first night, I moved my stuff in. I was thoroughly embarrassed, but did my rounds covering the reflective surfaces. I set an alarm on my phone for 1:50 a.m., got around the apartment and pulled down all the curtains, threw a towel over the bathroom mirror and spun the computer monitor around. It felt like a toddler playing hide and seek. The first week was incredibly uneventful. A bit boring, really. I would do my rounds and then drift off to sleep to the muffled sound of traffic. The walls are very thick, concrete and brick, so once the curtains are drawn, you're in your own sealed-off little world. But about midway through the second week, things started to shift, though I can't really explain how I know. It was this intense feeling, the kind where you feel the prickles on your neck when someone's staring at you, just 100 times worse. Around 3 a.m. one night, I got thirsty, the kind of half awake, stumbling to the kitchen to get a glass of water thirsty. I'd skipped turning on the light, navigating by the ambient streetlight filtering through the crack between the drapes and the window. I grabbed a clean glass off the dish rack and turned on the tap. When I raised the glass to my lips, I froze. My microwave. I'd completely forgotten the door. It was black glass and shiny, a perfect mirror of the dark kitchen behind me. Except it wasn't. In the reflection, in the microwave, was a figure. Tall and incredibly thin. It was wrapped in what looked like damp bandages, and the angle of its head seemed impossible. Its skull nearly resting on its shoulder. It was looking at me. The glass slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest, waiting to be attacked. There was no one in the kitchen. I looked back at the microwave. The only reflection was of my dark, empty kitchen. I chalked it up to sleep paralysis, a hallucination induced by stress and suggestion. Immediately, I taped a sheet of cardboard over the microwave door. I cleaned up the glass with shaking hands, slicing my finger open, and didn't sleep again that night. Since then, I went militant. Not just draping the mirrors, I gaff taped them. I taped over the shiny chrome on my toaster. I taped over the glass front of my oven. I even put a matte screen over my laptop and my phone, and I still shut it down and buried it under my pillow way before 2:14 a.m. I started doing research by going to the city archives. The lofts were a textile factory back in the 1920s that caught fire in 1928. 12 people died in a room lined with mirrors. Then I looked into the tenants before me. They didn't just move out. I found a police report for the apartment 3 doors down. Domestic disturbance call. They found the tenant screaming in the bathroom, clawing at the mirror, saying, "It's not me. That's not me in there." I should have left then. I should have paid the lease break fee and slept in my car. But humans are stubborn creatures. I told myself I had this under control. I had a system. As long as I stuck to the rules, the midnight guest could not enter. The lease stated that an uncovered reflective surface was an invitation. If I did not invite it, it could not enter. It had rules. But I forgot one detail. The most dangerous reflective surface is not a mirror or a window. Tonight, I had a deadline on a huge stadium rendering for work. I was running on caffeine and sheer anxiety. I stayed up late, and the time hit 2 a.m. I saved the project, shut down the computer, and did my rounds. Big mirror covered, checked the windows, checked the appliances, felt safe. I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth, leaving the hall light off and a dim night light on so that the chrome of the faucet wouldn't unexpectedly flash and startle me into catching my reflection. I spat in the sink, watching the water swirl down the drain. But then, the water stopped draining. The water gathered in the white porcelain bowl of the sink. It rose, dark and still. And there it was, a perfectly circular, reflective surface. I stared down at it. I couldn't tear my eyes away. I saw my own face in the reflection of the still water. But the reflection was wrong. My reflection was not looking down into the sink. It was looking straight ahead at me and smiling. It wasn't a human smile. It stretched way too far. The eyes in the reflection were entirely black. Not the normal black with a white dot of a pupil, just an abyss where an eye should be. I tried to step away. I tried to scream, but I was frozen. The guest wasn't behind me this time. It was in the reflection, and it was rising. The water in the sink began to ripple, not from the drain, but from the center, as though something were pushing up from below. My reflection's hands began to emerge, not down into the sink, but up, out of the water. Icy, cold fingers gripped my throat. They felt solid, like iron. They felt so cold against my skin. I could feel the chill penetrate my shirt, smelling faintly of stagnant rot and copper. I was pulled downward. My face was only inches from the surface of the water, as those two black holes in the reflection of my own face fixed on mine, and a voice resonated, not in the room, but in my own skull. Thank you. I thrashed, kicked. My arm flailed and knocked over the heavy porcelain toilet tank lid. Without thought, I swung, smashing the toilet tank lid down onto the sink. The ceramic cracked and the sink broke apart, water spraying everywhere, drenching my legs. The reflection shattered into 1,000 glittering wet pieces. The grip around my throat released immediately. I tumbled onto the tile floor, gasping for air, coughing. Silence. The water drained away into the cracked porcelain below where the pipe had burst. I crawled backward, crab-like, out of the bathroom and slammed the door shut. I didn't stop, grabbing my wallet and bolted out the apartment door, leaving it wide open behind me. I ran down 6 flights of stairs because I couldn't bear the idea of stepping into the mirrored elevator. Out on the street, it was pouring with rain. I stood on the sidewalk, my clothes soaked through to the bone. And it was then I realized what I had really done wrong. I looked down at a puddle on the sidewalk. No reflection. I looked in a shop window. Nothing. Checked the side view mirror of a parked car. Empty. I don't cast a reflection anymore. Well, not one that I can see anyway. But in the corner of my eye, I see something. The midnight guest. Walking where I'm walking. A split second behind. Getting closer to the surface with each moment. Whatever it was that crawled out of that sink, I don't think it was just me. And the thing that's tailing me, I think is just waiting for me to stare at a mirror long enough so it can fully emerge. So I'm warning you, if you want to rent a loft in Greystone, don't sign if you see that clause. And if you're listening to this on your phone or your laptop right now, please don't keep staring when the screen goes black. The silence period had already started. He knew the second the doors of the elevator closed. He'd mistimed getting on, thinking he could use it before it started. The elevator dipped and kept going down. Somebody was in here with him. They were pressed into the far corner, hand against the railing, breathing too fast. He saw the panic on their face. Their eyes kept darting to the panel and back, as though trying to accelerate their destination with their gaze. He noticed the sweat, a dark curve spreading out from their shirt collar. The indicator on the panel froze. The elevator slowed and then suddenly stopped. The other person lunged forward, hands braced on their knees, and expelled a breath that was more of a gasp. They kept it quiet. He took a step towards them without thinking. The word died in his throat. Not because he'd wanted to stop, but because thinking about saying it produced a feeling of resistance that he couldn't push through. He reached out and hit the emergency button instead. A green light instantly illuminated around the button. Request acknowledged. He waited stupidly for the voice. There wasn't one. There never was during silence. The other person slid down the wall, legs folded awkwardly underneath them, their breath caught in the back of their throat. He crouched down beside them, his hand hovering near their shoulder. He wanted to ask. He didn't. He reached for the doors, pushed the button. Nothing. Pressed his hands to the seam between them and pulled. They didn't move. He hit the emergency button again. Request acknowledged. He stood and kicked the wall, a sharp sting of pain shooting up his leg. He kicked it again, then banged against the doors. 3 hard blows, a pause, then 3 more. The noise clattered down the shaft, tinny and weak. He could hear footsteps outside. They slowed. He hit the doors again. The footsteps stopped. For a second, he hoped. Maybe that was enough. Maybe they'd tap back or call out, "Hello, is everything all right?" Just a tiny infraction. But the footsteps continued, walking away. It wasn't that they hadn't heard. They had heard. They just hadn't answered. Answering was intent. Intent was forbidden. The person behind him let out a pained gasp and sagged forward, hands clutching at their chest, and then falling limp to the floor. Their arm hung at an odd angle, fingers curling and uncurling as if seeking a sensation that was no longer there. He knelt again, sitting them up to support their head and neck and keep their shoulders straight. Knowledge from countless posters and public service announcements. The person's eyes lifted and stared deeply at him. Then their hands slowly began to rise, a slow movement as though fighting against pressure. They started to sign. The first shape was unmistakable. He had learned it in school, like everyone else. Early on, when silence started, visual language had been allowed, one of the few concessions. But not anymore. Signing wasn't permitted in silence. Silence didn't prohibit noise or sound. It prohibited communication in any form. They completed half the sign and their hands stopped, hanging in the air, trembling. Their eyes darted to the camera in the corner of the ceiling, then back to him. They dropped their hands. Their breathing faltered. They tried again. The signs were hurried, almost clumsy, but he recognized them. A name, a location. One hand failed halfway through, fingers going slack. The other shook violently, trying to compensate. They reached for him and clamped onto his hands with a desperate grip, pulling his fingers, guiding them into position to complete the sign. A cart rolled by, its wheels clicking over an uneven surface. Activity continued in the building, oblivious to their plight. The other person squeezed his hands tighter, trying to finish. He knew what completing it would mean. He also knew what refusing it might mean. The silence period had hours to go. He didn't pull his hands away. He didn't finish the sign. The elevator remained still. And somewhere above them, they were being watched. Some hours passed, and the elevator still had not moved. The other person's weight pressed harder against him now. Their head, unable to stay up, dropped forward onto their chest. He again pressed the emergency button. Request acknowledged. He watched, hopelessly, expecting a different outcome. But as before, nothing happened. He kicked the door as hard as he could in frustration. The other person let out a loud, sharp gasp. Their eyes were opened wider now, and they lifted their hands to start signing. Their hand motions were smooth, their panic dulled by a desperate resolve. A name, a location. He understood them again instantly. The next signs were still clear, providing more details of a building and a floor. Their fingers started to falter again, the effort being too much, and their fingers locked, unable to complete the sign. They looked at him. He could see the pleading in their eyes. They gripped his hands, their fingers digging into his flesh, attempting to press his into the required shapes. They were too weak to direct it fully, locking halfway, the effort collapsing. They sighed and let out a weak moan as their head fell back against the wall. He glanced at the ceiling panel, at the black camera directly above. Suddenly, so softly it was barely audible, something clicked. The small red light next to the camera's lens glowed to life. He froze. The camera tilted, a micro adjustment to center the frame. It had been offline, or maybe it had been watching the whole time, and now they wanted him to know. Their hands trembled violently as they tried to reach for him again. He thought about speaking. One word: help. It would require less energy than resisting. His mouth opened slightly, and air passed his tongue. His voice died in his throat, caught between thought and fear. Everyone knew that violations were not punished immediately. All evidence was gathered first, then analyzed later. Before he could think about it further, the other person's body started to convulse. Their eyes rolled slightly back before struggling to focus. He helped pull up their shoulders, getting them upright again. They tried to perform the signs. This time, the motions were shaky and clumsy, but he understood the same name and location, as if they were afraid he would forget if they didn't keep signing them. A distant, metallic thud echoed up the elevator shaft, followed by a vibration that thrummed through the floor. The elevator lights flickered, a single, brief flash. He jumped. It looked as if they were starting up. but the vibration subsided, and it didn't move. The other person's fingers twitched against his wrist, pulling at his arm, guiding his hand, pressing the shapes into place and trying to finish the sign. He looked down at the grip on his hand. He could feel their failing muscles at work and hear their breath faltering again. He thought about the time, that there was no way to measure how far into the silence it was. Did they only have minutes left, or still hours? He didn't want to imagine still being here when the other person stopped breathing altogether, when the doors opened and the questions he wouldn't want to answer started coming. He pulled his hand away gently, just enough to stop the sign. The other person looked at him. There wasn't anger or fear in their eyes, but a sense of knowing the impossible position he was in. Their grip relaxed. Slowly, their fingers slipped from his skin. They collapsed into his lap. The elevator felt smaller and the air thicker. He stood up sharply and pushed the emergency button again. Request acknowledged. He banged his fists violently against the doors, at a loss for what else he could do. The other person started coughing, then choking. He looked back instantly. Their head was tilted against the wall, their eyes now only half open. He crouched down, supporting their neck. Their chest rose and fell. It paused and rose. The pause lengthened each time, his own breath feeling impossibly loud in his ears. The red light on the camera glowed steadily. He stared at it and wondered if whoever saw it would understand the distinction between doing and failing. He felt a faint twitch of the person's fingers against his arm. He took their hand without conscious thought. Their grip barely returned the pressure. No more signs, no more strength. The elevator lights flickered once, longer this time. He looked at the panel. The number blinked and changed. The elevator lurched violently, throwing him against the wall. The other person slumped, their weight dragging at his arm. The elevator hum intensified as it started to move. And then the other person stopped breathing. The silence period ended as it had begun, without announcement or notice. The elevator pitched, steadied, and then began to descend. The other person leaned onto him as the motion began. Their weight dropped fully against him, and it felt like a finality he had already known. He shifted automatically under the pressure, lifting their shoulders, angling their head, same as he'd been doing for what seemed like hours. It elicited no response. The elevator slowed to a stop, and the doors opened. People were outside, not gathered or waiting to help, just going about their normal routines. Someone stopped, though, and recognized the situation immediately, pressing the emergency button on the panel, and said, "Medical emergency." Then events followed quickly after that. Emergency services arrived in minutes, fast enough to feel deliberate, as if they had been waiting for the silence to end. They moved with an efficient rhythm, gloves snapping, equipment unfurling, a strong hand firmly guiding him away as the other body was transferred onto a gurney. a pulse checked, then rechecked. "He's gone," said a voice that sounded unnervingly flat. The time of death was indeterminate, just that it happened during the silence. One of the officers asked him questions, briefly checking a tablet showing the elevator camera feed, then turned back to him. No questions about what had occurred between the floors. Nothing about the attempts to sign. Nothing about what he had almost done. They were procedural questions. Did you press the emergency button? Yes. Did you attempt to signal physically? Yes. Did you remain in the elevator until the period of silence ended? Yes. The questions were calm, delivered in unremarkable tones. The answers were sufficient. He found himself waiting for a particular question to arrive, whether he had spoken. One of the officers nodded, tapped something on a datapad. "Thank you for staying calm," she said, not looking up. "And for your cooperation," added another, already turning away. Neither asked if he had completed the sign. Neither asked what choice he had made. There was no need to. He remained off to one side, watching the stretcher being wheeled away. His throat felt parched. The space around the open elevator doors began to fill with the routine flow of people resuming their lives, as if the other person were already an irrelevance. Someone murmured an apology as an arm brushed his. For a few seconds, he stayed there, acutely aware of his hands hanging at his sides, slightly curled, waiting to be guided into action. Eventually, a hand motioned him away, and he complied. The remainder of the day was uneventful. The notice of the review of events arrived later. There was no charge or reprimand, simply a notification that a review had been scheduled. No date or detail of the review. He read it again, more slowly. It did not ask what he had done. It did not accuse. It only noted that something had happened during the silence involving him, and it would eventually be looked at. Days passed. As the next period of silence approached, he felt the familiar tension with a newfound clarity. Meetings being rearranged, stairs being chosen over elevators, and building exits being approached with greater frequency. No one talked about it, because no one ever did. He noticed himself standing nearer to doorways, closer to open public spaces, without framing any of it as a choice, but as a consequence. Not exactly out of fear, but out of a greater understanding. On the morning when the next silence period started, he was on a public plaza and stood there watching the city around him, the impassive faces and deliberate movements. The silence doesn't ask you to decide what is right and wrong. It never has. It only wants you to know what you are willing to leave unsaid. I maintained offshore wind turbines for 18 years, and there's one specific inspection I've never been able to explain. The job that day was fairly standard: annual tower inspection and ladder safety checks. You're looking for things like corrosion, loose bolts, integrity of the platforms. The boring stuff that keeps people from dying. I was part of a 3-man crew doing a run of turbines that were all within relatively close proximity to one another. Get dropped off on the platform, by the boat, do your checks, radio in, and wait for pickup. Most of your days offshore are actually mundane like this. This was toward the middle of my career. I wasn't green, but I still wanted to be the guy out working the actual jobs instead of being stuck in the office every day. The turbine I was supposed to inspect was identified as T12 on the work pack, but the actual number on the tower was so old that the paint was already faded yellow. When I was getting ready and looking over the work packet, I distinctly noticed that the font on the tower's ID seemed off compared to the newer turbines around it, as if it had been repainted by a different contractor years ago. I mentioned it to my supervisor almost as an afterthought. "Tower ID looks like the older model," I said, not expecting any kind of reaction. He glanced up from his clipboard. "Probably is. Log it later, and let's move." We approached the tower on our transfer vessel and prepared to land on the platform. The wind was a steady, but not extreme breeze. There was the normal vibration running through the tower as the blades turned high above. We were splitting tasks. One of the other guys was doing an external check around the base. The third guy was assessing the tower for corrosion at the lower platforms, and I was taking the inside climb. The tower door is just a normal, heavy metal hatch with a handle and a multi-point latch, not something you can just shoulder open. It's built to be completely weatherproof. The moment I went to grab the handle to pull it open, the latch gave way. I assumed that someone else had opened it already, and I just not noticed while I was securing my lanyard. So I glanced back over my shoulder to see if my colleagues were already coming towards the door. Neither of them was anywhere near it. One was focused on taking photos of the ladder brackets, and the other was watching the boat, performing his own visual safety checks. I turned back, pulled the hatch open, and a smell of damp soil wafted out. The kind of smell you get on your boots after walking through wet grass after a rain shower. Not the smell of a metal tube 60 meters above the sea, sealed off from the elements. Towers smell like metal, oil, sea salt, and that stagnant, stale air from being sealed for long periods. They don't smell like earth. I stood there for longer than I should have. Maybe condensation had somehow collected and mixed with rust to create something that resembled mud. Maybe some bird had got in and died somewhere. I've seen weirder. I stepped inside and pulled the heavy hatch shut behind me to maintain the sealed environment. The lights inside were on, which is normal for a turbine tower since they are movement activated. However, the inside of the tower felt strangely warmer than it should have. Again, not something that would raise a major red flag on its own. Turbines are often warm inside due to solar gain and residual heat, and a technician could have been inside earlier in the week for maintenance work. But there were no logs indicating that. Every tower has an internal logbook or digital record accessible through the system. At a minimum, there's always a keycard system that registers who has accessed the tower and for what purpose. I checked the access panel on the interior wall just next to the door. The reader was showing green, meaning there had been no recent recorded entry and no warning of any kind. I climbed the first section of ladder, which brings you to the lowest platform. Turbine ladders have platforms every 20 meters or so, along with a fall arrest track you clip your lanyard to. If you slip, the slider mechanism locks, stopping your fall. As I always do, I was paying attention to the condition of the fall arrest track while I climbed, checking for anything that looked bent, corroded, or loose that would cause the slider to jam. The first platform was clear. No water pooled anywhere, no excessive corrosion. Then I saw it. On the grating, at the edge of the platform, was a smear of something dark and gritty, like mud. It wasn't a drip or a leak. It was an actual smear of dirt, with tiny bits of plant matter mixed in. There wasn't much of it, but it was impossible to miss in the otherwise sterile environment. I crouched down and touched it with a gloved finger and rubbed it against the grating. There's nowhere in or on an offshore wind turbine where you can just get dirt. I stood up, checked the soles of my boots, and confirmed they were clean. The boat deck had been wet with spray, but not mud. I took a photo of the dirt smear. I then radioed down. "Hey, did either of you come inside before me?" My supervisor's voice crackled back. "No. Why?" "Got some dirt smeared on the first platform." There was a pause, and then, "Probably from the previous maintenance guys. Just make a note of it." "Roger that," I said, because there's never any point arguing over the radio. I kept climbing. The next section of ladder took me to the second platform. The hum of the turbine was a constant drone that you barely notice in a tower, because if you pay attention to how high up you are, you'll get dizzy, and that's dangerous. It's all about focusing on 3 points of contact at all times: your lanyard and your breathing. On the second platform, there was more dirt, just like the first. This time, there was a partial boot print on the grating, with the toe and heel clearly visible. It looked like someone had been walking, then scuffed their boot to try and knock some of the dirt off. But still, where could that dirt possibly come from in a tower on the sea? I leaned in closer and saw a faint streak running along the edge of the platform toward the ladder, climbing further up the tower. Then I heard a faint metallic clink directly above me. It wasn't a structural noise or a vibration. It sounded like a tool being placed on a steel surface. I stopped climbing immediately and stood still, listening. Offshore, you learn to distinguish between the normal noise the tower makes and noises that suggest human activity. I heard it again, a short, sharp, metallic scraping noise, like metal sliding on metal. I resisted the urge to radio down again. If you start talking about phantom noises offshore, you tend to get written up for creating unnecessary work or being a hazard. When I reached the third platform, the air had cooled significantly. The dirt was also more obvious on this platform. There were multiple smears and scuffs on the grating, and what looked like a drag mark along the ladder rail. And that's when I saw it. Dangling from the fall arrest track, just above the ladder, was the slider for the fall arrest gear. It was unclipped. The fall arrest slider is what stops your fall. People die because they forget to clip in properly, or they let their lanyard come unclipped. The slider was hanging from nothing, just swaying gently with the hum of the tower. I checked my harness, and my own fall arrest slider was properly clipped in above me on the track section I'd just been climbing. This was a second fall arrest slider on the track. This means someone had either been inside this tower recently and hadn't been properly attached to their fall arrest gear, or they had disconnected from theirs and then completely forgotten about it before exiting the tower. Neither option seemed remotely like normal procedure. I searched for a logical explanation, but could think of none, especially alongside the dirt, the weird smells, and the tool noises. I radioed down again, trying to keep my voice even. I've got an extra fall arrest slider unclipped, midway up the tower. It's not mine. Take a photo and log it, my supervisor replied. His voice a bit sharper this time. We'll deal with it later, so we don't stop the schedule. Roger that. I took the photo and stood on the platform, listening. The tower hummed, a constant drone. The wind whistled through the metalwork, distant and muffled. Then I heard it again. A soft thump, like a boot landing on metal grating, followed by a faint rattle, like someone shifting a toolbox. I didn't immediately call in. There's someone in the tower. In the offshore world, that's a serious accusation with severe consequences. If it's wrong, you can cause thousands of dollars to be lost in shutdown time, and the investigation alone is a headache. You only report something like that if you are absolutely certain and can back it up with undeniable evidence. So I kept climbing, because stopping mid-tower was its own kind of risk. I was scared, but because I'm stubborn, I needed to know what was going on, and my supervisor was the type who would reprimand you for pausing unnecessarily. When I got to the next platform up, the boot marks changed. They were deeper at the toe, and they were fresh. The mud was still damp. I touched it with my gloved finger and felt the grit. That's when I finally clicked into safety assessment mode. If there's someone in a confined vertical space who isn't accounted for, they're climbing without being attached to fall arrest gear, and I'm hearing noises above that suggest they're active, then I'm in a dangerous situation. Putting myself in a position below an unknown person in a narrow tower is just asking for trouble. I stopped climbing. I clipped onto the platform anchor and stood there, looking up the ladder into the dim shaft. The lights were on, but the internal tower structure created many shadows. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed up the shaft and came back to me, thin and distorted. Silence. Then, again, a sharp, metallic tap, followed by something like fabric brushing against steel. I radioed down one more time, still trying to maintain a neutral tone. "I'm aborting the climb. I've encountered clear evidence of recent activity in the tower." There was a long pause. Then my supervisor asked, "What kind of activity?" "Boot prints, mud, tool noises," I said. Silence again. Then, "You're alone up there." "That's the problem," I said. Then he said, much more quietly this time, "Come down." It's not easy to descend when your hands are sweating and you're fighting the urge to glance up. I unclipped from the upper platform and carefully started down, slow and steady, keeping my weight centered, feeling the hum vibrate throughout the steel rungs. About halfway down the tower, the tool noises started again. This time, much closer. Not several platforms above, just one or maybe two platforms up. I didn't stop. I kept climbing down. As I reached the next platform, my boot hit the grating and the tower emitted a deeper groan than normal, like it had just shifted. Turbines are constantly adjusting themselves to wind direction, even when not operational. So minor structural sounds are normal, but this felt different. The hum of the turbine also changed slightly. It became a bit higher in pitch. I forced myself to keep descending. This is when the job can become really dangerous. If a turbine starts making sudden, unexplained noises, it's possible something is actually activating or starting up, and you don't want to be caught on a ladder in the middle of it. I radioed again, short and sharp. Any changes to the turbine state? Any remote commands to this unit? Static. Then my supervisor. No, it's locked out. Keep coming down. Understood. I continued down, and the hum of the turbine slowly settled back to normal. When I reached the bottom, I looked back at the lowest platform. The smear of mud I had photographed earlier was there, but now there was a fresh drag line through it. I didn't pause to take another photo. I just opened the hatch, stepped out onto the boat landing, and let the fresh air hit me in the face like a blast of cold water. My supervisor took one look at my face and stopped what he was doing. "Did you hear something?" he asked me quietly. "Yes," I said, "and there's dirt inside." He didn't question me about the noise. He just gave a small, single nod. We got back in the boat without saying anything else and left the tower. From the outside, it looked just like another silent, grey monolith sitting out in the ocean. Back in the office on shore, I filled out the report on the tablet. I stated the facts. Access hatch found unlocked upon entry. Dirt-like residue found on internal platforms. Unclipped secondary fall arrest slider found mid-tower. Unexplained metallic noises heard above. Internal inspection aborted due to safety concerns. I didn't write down that I thought there was a person in the tower, because it wasn't something I could prove. When I handed in the report to my supervisor, he took one look at it, skimmed through the entries, and told me to leave the photos on the tablet. "Why?" I asked him. He gave me that look that supervisors reserve for when they don't want to answer your question. "I'll handle it," he said. That was the last I heard of it from him. No follow-up, no good job on catching that, just nothing. I was curious, so about a week later, I checked the maintenance log for the T12 turbine during a quiet moment in the office. The report showed it had been marked as complete by someone, though it certainly wasn't by me. No notes, no photos, no record of the abandoned inspection, nor mention of dirt or the loose slider. The timestamp didn't match my report either. I assumed it was a mistake and pulled up the turbine's ID in the system again. That's when I noticed something that I swear I hadn't seen before. The turbine ID in the system had an old suffix in brackets, unlike the others in the cluster. It was a small detail, something you could easily miss. I didn't quit over that incident. I've never been one to walk away from something that simply. I stayed in offshore for years afterward. I've weathered storms that make that tower feel like a playground. I've been stuck out overnight, waiting for a window to pick us up. I've had critical failures at moments you wouldn't believe. You learn to accept a lot of things when you're working out there, as long as those things fall into categories you understand. Mechanical failure, weather events, or human error. This didn't fit into any of those categories. What sticks with me is my report completely vanished, and it was marked complete without a soul even stepping inside, or that whoever did step inside found nothing worth mentioning. And it's that on a quiet day, with the tower supposedly locked up tight, I knew I wasn't alone. I shouldn't have stayed for the milk and cookies. We called it the clubhouse, even though it was Mark's basement. The ceiling hung low. Someone's dad had donated an old couch that we had pushed up against the wall. It was somewhere for us to just hang out. We had used it since school. We played music, video games, flipped through magazines. Mostly, we just avoided responsibilities. Tonight, it was just me and Mark. The other three had bailed earlier. We planned to watch a movie, but hadn't decided one we could both agree on. After a bit, he said he was tired and went upstairs for a drink. I stayed downstairs. My eyes were wandering around the room, looking at nothing in particular. Then, I saw the paper. It looked like a page from an old notebook, rough around the edges, starting to turn yellow. It was folded once and wedged in between two cinder blocks near the back wall, close to the floor. I walked over and pulled it out from the tiny crack in the bricks. When I opened it, the handwriting was smudged and shaky. If someone finds this, please help me. I am trapped somewhere, but I don't know where. It's dark, and I can hear people walking. That was all there was. At first, I thought it must have been a joke. Something dumb Mark or one of the guys had written as a prank for someone to find. I peered through the opening, but couldn't see anything. It was way too dark. I pressed my ear to the concrete, then knocked. It was solid. I looked around the room some more, but the walls were bare, except for the two group photos of when there were 6 of us. I shouted up for Mark. No answer. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. Soon after, Mark came back down. I was about to show him, but something stopped me. I said I felt unwell and tired too, so told him I was leaving. He shrugged and said he hoped I felt better tomorrow. Just as I reached the bottom of the stairs, the door opened at the top. His mom was at the top step, holding a tray with cookies and milk. She always still makes them, like we are 12 years old. She told me to wait and take some before I left. They smelt so warm and sweet. I waited downstairs for her and reached out to take some. That's all I remember. I just woke up 20 minutes ago, and after realizing where I was, needed to write down what I could still remember. I'm not sure how they didn't find my phone on me, but the battery is running low. Right now, I can't tell where I am. The whole room around me is concrete. It's really small. My legs can hardly stretch out. It feels like it was built for one person. There are no windows, and I can't work out where the door is either. But one wall has a thin seam. The air smells like damp dust and bleach. I tried shouting out for anyone, but it was just silence back. I've heard footsteps outside the wall. They're slow and careful, and then they move away. So if anyone is listening to this, oh wait, the footsteps are coming closer this time. I need to turn off the phone light. I think they're coming in. Please send help. The clubhouse is at 10678